Y'all do me a favor. If you have a phone, an iPad, a smart device of any kind, please hold it up in the air for me so that everyone can see it around you. Put it underneath your seat. Leave it there for the evening. Awesome. Thank you, thank you. So we're continuing our series, Elephant in the Room, where we are discussing the big things that are in the room that no one wants to talk about. The things that are awkward, that are weird, that typically in church we know they're important, but we might not know why they're important, so we just pass it along to someone else to talk about. Well, tonight we are talking about yet another elephant. And we're not talking about these things because it's cool or it's hip, but because it's important. And it shows the character of Jesus relating directly to your life today. So tonight's elephant is one that you've probably thought about, one that you've probably talked about, one that you have maybe wanted to do, which is totally fine. Tonight's elephant is dating. Ooh. Raise your hand if you have ever thought about dating someone, or if you currently are dating someone. Wow, fewer hands than I thought. My hand is up because I am married. Booyah. Hey, when you get married, you're always dating. Boom. Brownie points, right, babe? Cha-ching. All right. So dating is all over y'all's world. All over. It is the drama in the group chat. It is, if you didn't know, the engagement of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce a few weeks ago. That was like the biggest thing on the internet. When they started dating, it was the biggest thing on the internet, right? Because everyone wants to be in a dating relationship of some sort, or we've thought about it, or we might feel pressure to figure out all what dating is and who to date and all sorts of stuff. But almost no one teaches how to date with wisdom or how to date biblically. You're told who to date, when to date, how many people you should be dating, all sorts of whack things, but no one explains what dating actually is or why it matters to your faith, why it matters to your relationship with Jesus. So tonight we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what dating is, what dating isn't. We're going to talk about the purpose behind it and how it points to something that is bigger than just having someone with you. We're going to talk about the temptations that often come into dating, and then we're going to look at how Jesus must be the center of this in order for us to truly succeed. So this message tonight is not an anti-dating message. Let me say that first and foremost. It is not a pro-dating message. This is just looking biblically at what it looks like to date someone, okay? So let's start by asking the real question. What is dating? So point number one, if you're taking notes, is what is dating and what it isn't. What is dating and what it isn't. So last week we talked about the covenant of marriage, and we're going to dip our toes into that a little bit more this evening. And we looked at how it's not just a romantic contract between two people. This is not just a, hey, I love you, hey, you love me, let's go get married. We saw that this is a design purposely created by the Lord, a covenant between man and wife, and we see that the purpose of it is to reflect Christ in the relationship of the church. And we see that marriage is designed by God to be a lifelong promise of love and of service and of sacrifice and of commitment. And that covenant matters. And how we approach dating directly affects marriage and directly affects how seriously we take that covenant later on in life. Dating isn't something to take lightly because it is the path that prepares us for something much deeper. It shapes how we think about commitment, how we learn about people, how we learn about ourselves, and how we view others who are made in the image of God. So what is dating? Dating is a process of discernment. Dating is a process of discernment. This is an intentional season of learning if someone could be your spouse. Not a perfect person, but a godly one. So you're asking your questions like, can I see myself marrying this person? Do they help me love Jesus more? Do we honor Christ in the way that we treat one another? questions like that. And if you're not ready to think in that way when it comes to dating, that's totally fine. That's not a flaw. I would argue that that is wisdom. And if marriage isn't even a category in your mind right now, then you're probably not ready to date. And that's totally okay. Because that kind of investment can be a lot. You do not prepare for a marathon by just sprinting in circles over and over again. You prepare day by day, and the same goes for dating. So now, here's where a lot of people get it wrong. Not just students, but adults too. We take something that is meant to prepare us for a lifelong commitment, and we turn it to something that is casual, that is selfish, or that is reactive. And so that's why we need to talk about what dating is not, and how misunderstood it can and how when misunderstood it can damage you and the other person in your relationship with the Lord. So dating is not a way to find your identity. It's not a way to find your true identity. Your identity is found in Christ, not in a relationship status. If you don't first know who you are in Jesus before you start dating someone, you will look to them to define who you are. And if they're in a bad mood, it will make your value lessen. But no one is meant to carry that weight. And when they fail to complete you, quote unquote, when they fail to keep you feeling good all the time, your identity begins to plummet and you feel disappointed and insecure. And they will feel the pressure of trying to be your savior. And that's not love. That's a trap. So dating is not a way to find your identity. Dating is also not emotional therapy. Another person cannot heal wounds that only God can reach. If you are dating someone to escape loneliness or to numb pain or to feel something to avoid your own struggles, you are not entering that relationship to treat that person with kindness. You are entering that relationship just to take everything. And that kind of relationship becomes emotionally unstable. It becomes often manipulative. And it becomes toxic for both people involved. You may feel better in the moment, but both hearts are being used in this process. Dating is not emotional therapy. Dating is also not a social flex or a status boost. We do not date people because they are trophies. We do not want to date someone because they might make us look better. It might give us a certain bit of clout or status at school. If you're dating someone to impress your friends or to raise your social standings, then you're turning a human being made in the image of God who has value and dignity into a object, lowering their value. And when the excitement wears off, and it will, so does your investment in that relationship. Because what you view as just something to help you get a step higher has now lost all of its worth. And that leads to confusion and to bitterness and to regret. And the last thing that dating isn't, and this is probably the most important one, dating is not marriage. Dating is not marriage. Because no covenant has been made. Marriage is the only relationship where the full emotional, physical, mental, spiritual relation come together, and it is good and pleasing in the eyes of God, and God says, yes, this is good. That is the only time that those are blessed by the Lord. Dating is not that space. When you act like you're married, sleeping together, becoming deeply entangled emotionally or spiritually, but you're not actually committed to one another in the covenant of marriage, you are building something with no foundation. And when it ends, and most of these relationships do, it doesn't just not work out. It hurts like a divorce because your heart was fooled into thinking that you were closer to this person. Wounds are deeper, boundaries are crossed, and the healing is harder when we treat dating like it is marriage. It is set apart for a reason. So that is what marriage is, or what dating is and what dating is not. Very important things, very important distinctions. Dating leads us to marriage, but it is not marriage. Point number 2, the purpose of dating and what marriage reflects. So if dating is the process, if dating is the road that we're traveling to get to our end destination, marriage is that destination. That's why understanding the purpose of dating matters, because it shapes the direction that we're heading in. The purpose of dating is not just companionship, or attention, or romantic experiences. While those are a part of it, those are very important parts of it. It's not about finding someone who makes you laugh or who gives you butterflies or validates your self-worth. It is about discerning whether someone is the kind of person you can enter into a lifelong covenant with, and whether you're becoming that person too. That means that dating is not just about who you are with, but who you are also becoming. When you understand what marriage actually is, as we have discussed before, a reflection of Christ in the church, how when people look at a godly marriage, they see Jesus, and they see Jesus' sacrifice for the church. They say that is a representation of the gospel. When we see and take seriously marriage, then we should look and prepare with dating just as serious. In Ephesians 5, when Paul says that marriage is the picture of Christ in the church, marriage is built on sacrifice and service and forgiveness and faithfulness. It's not about getting everything that you want, but it is about giving yourself fully to someone. And so that kind of covenant doesn't just show up on your wedding day. It's not at the altar where the decision to love someone with the sacrificial love of Christ, it doesn't take place on the altar. That decision should have been made long before you even thought about marrying the person. It's formed in how you live and how you think, in treating people long before you say, I do. Dating is a part of that formation. So if you treat dating casually, it could train your heart into treating commitment as casual. If you date with unclear intentions, then it could train your heart into practicing patterns that will damage your future promises. But if you date with a godly purpose, you're learning to love with clarity. You're being patient. You have self-control. Qualities that build a stronger foundation for marriage. So let's acknowledge a real truth here tonight. Most of the people you date will not be the person that you marry. Most of the people who you date won't be the person that you marry. Only one of them will. And that's totally fine. Just because a relationship doesn't lead to marriage doesn't mean that that relationship is now meaningless. Just because you and your perfect person at the time didn't get married doesn't mean that all of that time has been wasted. It can still be purposeful if you have approached it with honor. Even if you don't marry the person you're dating, God can use that relationship to grow you into the future husband or wife of your future spouse. And it can also grow the person that you were dating for their future spouse. When you are dating someone, you are influencing someone's daughter, someone's son, someone made in the image of God, someone who may one day, statistically a high possibility, they will be someone else's spouse. So the way you treat them will leave a mark. That's why dating should never be taken lightly. Even if it ends, how you dated still matters. You don't have to marry the first person you date, but you should treat them like they are someone's future spouse, because they are. And you should be praying that your future spouse, whatever relationship status they currently are, that they are being treated that same way. That God is preparing them for you, and you are being prepared for them. And one day, you will want your future spouse to have been treated in the same way, with kindness and respect. So here's the question that should guide every dating relationship. Is this relationship helping me become more like Christ? And is it helping them do the same? If the answer is no, if you are in a current relationship and your answer is no, or if you find yourself in a relationship and your answer is no, it is not time to double down and to say, well, I can fix things. It might be time to let that person go for the betterment of them and of yourself. There's this thing that many Christians, y'all's age, will do, and adults will do it as well. It's this thing called missionary dating, right? Where one of them is a strong believer in the Lord, the other one is not, and the one who is a believer has in their mind, I can save that person, so I'm going to date them. But most of the time, the opposite happens, where you are now pulled lower and you move further away from Christ than you show them who Jesus is. So if you're in a place where you are dating someone who does not love the Lord, it might take a serious look inside of your heart on what to do next. And the answer probably is what you don't want to do. But Jesus calls us to do the right thing, and that is often hard. Point number 3. What do I look for? What do I look for in a relationship? This is one of the most common questions that I hear from students whenever this topic is brought up about boyfriends or girlfriends. What should I even look for in a boyfriend, in a girlfriend? And here's the thing. When this topic comes up in the church, a lot of people will quickly tell you, don't focus on their physical appearance. Focus on their heart. That's garbage. It's a load of trash. It sounds spiritual, not good. It makes it seem like physical attraction does not matter. Like you're supposed to just close your eyes, pray really hard, and they're going to come and shake your hand at church camp one day, and it's going to be, boom, there it is. Not how it works. That was not me endorsing camp relationships, by the way. That was not what just happened. Okay? All right. Just making sure we're all on the same page there. Because let's be real. God created beauty. He created beauty, and he created beauty for us to enjoy. When we look at creation, he designed our eyes to recognize beauty. He built into us a natural draw to find what we are attracted to. And so we look for it and we search for it. Physical attraction does matter. It's not shallow. It is not weird to notice that someone is beautiful or strong or carries themselves with confidence. In fact, it is part of what draws us to the connection to date someone in the first place. In the creation story, when God created Adam, he was alone. Put Adam to sleep, took a rib from Adam and formed Eve. Adam woke up, sees Eve, and he goes, "Whoa, man!" And that's why we have women. Just kidding, that's a joke. But in all honesty, Adam recognized the beauty that God created for him. It wasn't sinful, this was a celebration. I was first drawn to my wife over a picture because we met on a dating app. I will just say, she messaged my account as an example to show one of her friends how it worked, and then deleted the app for like 3 or 4 days. So I'm sitting here like, huh? What's happening? Obviously it worked out. We got married. But when she first popped up, it was like, I find her attractive. But that was not why I wanted to marry her. Because of her beauty was not the fact, or that was not the deciding factor that said I would want to spend my life with her. What made me want to spend my life with her was that she loved Jesus deeply. In fact, on our second or third date, I can't remember which one, but she said something like, I love Jesus and I love America. And I said in my mind, ding, that's the one. So yes, physical attraction is important. But if all you have is physical attraction, then you do not have a relationship. All you have is a crush. And if that's all you're going with, you don't need to date them. So what else should I look for? There are probably hundreds of things, and you can talk to your parents more about this later, but I've created a small list of just a few things that you should look for. The first thing that you should look for, the first quality that you should know about a person before you date them, is their relationship with God. That is the first thing. Do they genuinely follow Jesus, or do they just say that they do when it is convenient? Is their faith consistent when no one is watching? Whenever I hear someone in the group say, I'm starting to date this person, the first question I will always ask, or one of the first questions that I will always ask is, do they love Jesus? And what church do they go to? Well, I don't know. Find it out. It's important. Second thing, their circle outside of you. Do they have healthy friendships? Do they honor their parents? Do they spend time with godly people, or do they spend time with people that lead them away from Jesus? Or are you their entire world? If someone doesn't have any life or community outside of you, then that could be a red flag. That turns a relationship into isolation. And isolation leads to unhealthy dependency and jealousy and pressure. You want someone who loves you, but who does not need you to survive. Point number 3, their respect for your heart and your reputation. Are you and them setting boundaries, or are you pushing them? Are they trying to get you to disobey your parents? Or do they honor your parents' wishes? Do they care about how they talk about you when you aren't there? Do they protect your heart and protect your reputation? Are they helping you guard your purity, or constantly putting you in places and in situations that compromise it? If someone is truly pursuing Jesus, they will care deeply about protecting your heart, not just winning it. The fourth thing to look out for, and I feel like my dad saying this, but is their work ethic. Do they work hard at what they've been given? School, job, responsibilities. Laziness in dating usually becomes laziness in marriage. You're not looking for perfection, but you should look for someone who is driven and who has direction. So are they growing, and are they serving, and are they taking accountability for the decisions that they have made in their life, or are they just coasting? These are the kind of things that actually last. Looks can change. Notice how not a single one of those things was physical attraction. While yes, it is important, but looks can change, and they will change. Butterflies will fade, but faith, character, humility, and selflessness, those things, those are bricks that build something eternal. So don't just date someone who looks good next to you. Because when you're both 80, you won't look good. Date someone who helps you look more like Jesus. Point number 4, and we'll wrap up with this: the real temptations of dating. The real temptations of dating. We've talked about what dating is and what to look for, where dating is meant to lead, but now we need to talk about what might pull you off track, because there are very real temptations that come with dating. These are not hypotheticals. These are things that you almost guarantee will face. These are actual battles that students your age, some of you might even be in this room, are facing. And this is why dating must be approached with boundaries and wisdom. The first and the obvious one is sexual temptation. That is the first and the most obvious one. God designed physical intimacy to only be experienced in the covenant of marriage. That's it. Only in marriage. It was created as a gift to Adam and Eve, not to be experienced in dating. Not because God wants to keep something from you, but because he wants to protect something sacred for you. Dating someone does not give you a physical right to their body, and it does not give them a physical right to yours. That doesn't happen until there are 3 bands around your finger, or on your fingers, 1 and 2 with the lady. And when physical sides of relationships move too fast, it fogs your ability to think clearly, to evaluate wisely, and to honor God. Sexual sin doesn't often start with a decision. It starts with a slow drift, staying late when the parents have gone to sleep and no one's there, crossing boundaries, justifying things like, we're probably going to get married anyway, so let's just... Every boundary you cross will make it harder to stop the next time. So where do you set those boundaries? Set them far enough back to where you stay far away from that temptation. Whenever you're driving on a mountainous road, guardrails are not halfway down the mountain. They're right up against the edge of the road to keep you from going down the mountain in the first place. Your boundaries should be far enough away to where you are not relying on willpower, but you are relying on wisdom. So if you are asking yourself how far is too far, it's probably too far. Second thing, the temptation to act like you are married. That doesn't just mean physically, but it also happens emotionally and spiritually. You start depending on them for everything in your life. You make every decision together. You talk like you're already one. Like Scripture says, the two become one, and you act as if that has already taken place. But dating isn't marriage. There is no covenant. There is no vows. There's no promise before God. So if you start living like you're married without being married, you take on a level of emotional and spiritual intimacy that you are not ready to carry. And when it ends, it doesn't feel like a breakup. It hurts like a divorce, like we had mentioned. So that's why boundaries are not just about your body and your physical interactions. It is about your heart, and it is about your soul. And the third temptation is emotional dependence. It's easy in dating relationships to begin building your entire sense of peace around the person that you are dating. But then what if they don't text back? What if they don't have service and you can't hear from them? And then you start to stress that, well, what if they're talking to someone else? Or if they're having a bad day, all of a sudden it affects you and their approval becomes your sense of value. That's not love. That's emotional dependence on someone. And it's dangerous because no person is meant to carry the weight of your identity. When you are searching for someone to tell you who you are placing a burden on them that only Jesus is meant to carry. And if Jesus is not your foundation, that other person will become your idol. And eventually, they will fall off the pedestal that you have put them on, and both of you will feel crushed. So what do? You set boundaries. You invite people in, you pursue purity, and you ask hard questions. You listen when people who love you raise concerns about the person you are with. And most of all, you make sure your relationship with Christ is the one that you are most committed to. Because no relationship will thrive if Jesus is not the center of your life and of theirs. So at the end of the day, dating isn't just about who you're with. It's about who you belong to. And before you are anyone's boyfriend or girlfriend, before you are anyone's husband or wife, way down the road, you are God's child. You are loved and you are chosen. You don't need to rush into a relationship. You don't need to rush into a relationship to prove your value. Just because one of your friends is dating doesn't mean you have to. And just because your friends are telling you to date doesn't mean that you have to. You don't need someone's attention to feel seen. Jesus has already seen you at your worst, and he has loved you enough to die for you. And that's not a temporary love. That is a covenant from Christ. So the gospel changes the way that we date, which is crazy to think about, that the gospel of Jesus changes how we date because it changes who we are. You don't date to be filled. You date to overflow the love of Christ to someone. And you don't chase after someone to complete you because Jesus already has. And even if you've made mistakes in past relationships or when you make mistakes in future relationships, Jesus is quick to forgive. He is quick to forgive. The cross is big enough to cover your past and to lead you into something new. So you may not be dating right now, and that's okay, but I have a challenge for all of you. This isn't about rushing into something. It's about becoming the kind of person who honors God in your relationships, now and in the future. The challenge for you all this week, in your times of prayer, 3 things. Pray for your heart. Ask God to make you the kind of man or woman who reflects Jesus, who leads and who serves and who forgives and who loves like Jesus. Ask him to shape your character more than your image. Second thing, pray for your future spouse. You may not know who they are right now. You may have never met them, but God knows who they are. Ask that they would be growing in wisdom and in purity, in doing the hard thing and clinging close to Christ, so that if and when you meet, you're both ready to build something that is holy and pleasing to God. And the third thing is to pray for guarded eyes and a discerning heart. Ask God to help you see beyond just the surface of someone, to not be led only by physical beauty or by chemistry, but to recognize godly character in the fruit that it produces in someone's life. God cares deeply about your relationships because he cares deeply about your relationship with him. And he cares deeply about your soul. So don't settle with just the first person that you date. Don't settle. Don't rush this process. Don't date like the world does of, I'm going to date this person tonight and we might hook up and we'll see what happens. Be different. If you want someone who is different, who is like Christ, you be that person. Date like someone who belongs to Jesus. And whether you're single, dating, or something in between, your value does not come from your relationship status. It comes from the cross. So our bottom line for this evening is this. Dating isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about honoring God, guarding your heart, and becoming the kind of person who's ready for covenant love. That doesn't mean that you are going to marry the person you might be dating right now, but it is preparing you for that. Marriage is to be taken seriously. and the preparation for it is almost as important. So date with a purpose and let Christ lead you.